in our mythology and in our like ancient scripts and stuff, there's a lot of mention of snacks with alcohol.
And I think Indians are more like, khane mein kya hai? Give me 3 snacks that you would serve.
So kebabs, stuffed mushrooms, like cheese stuffed mushrooms, all the things that...
You know, most of the bars always serve salted, like any salted snack, because it dehydrates you. So that's I think a good business trick also to keep serving salted snacks so that people keep drinking more and more.
Definitely, I'm definitely a victim of that.
Hi everyone, I'm Swati and welcome to another episode of Sip by Sip with the Dram Club. In today's video, we have a very special guest, Smita Menon, who's a freelance journalist, and in her own words, her job is to eat and drink at a new place every day. Well, that's not because she's a glutton. That's because she's a journalist who specializes in F&B and hospitality. She worked with Conde Nast for a very long time, and that's where we got introduced. And for the last 2.5 years, she's been working as a freelance in the F&B space and covering bars, restaurants across India and Southeast Asia. So without further ado, let's get on with the podcast and we will let Smitha introduce herself.
Hi Swati, thank you so much for having me. This is fun. It's fun to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I've been in the food and drink space. I've been writing about the food and drink space for about 10 plus years now. I stumbled into lifestyle media. I started my career thinking I wanted to be a hard-nosed journalist, wanted to do like war reporting,
crime,
politics, all of that stuff.
Right.
And then graduated into a recession where nobody was hiring.
Right.
The only place that was hiring was Bloomberg TV,
okay,
which is a business news channel. And so I had to learn about the stock market and all of this stuff.
Right.
Got very bored doing that. And then moved into like lifestyle journalism.
Right.
Across TV. I've written for a bunch of publications, worked at NDTV Good Times, at Brown Paper Bag, and then the longest at Conde Nast, where I was the culinary editor. So there I was able to do a lot of cool things. We looked at food through the lens of travel. What our sort of premise was that food is the #1 reason why people travel.
Right.
It's literally the first thing that you want to know, like you'll message everyone saying, hi, I'm in a new city, where can I go eat and drink? So that was a fun sort of gig, obviously. It involved traveling the world, traveling India, and looking out for, honestly, very exciting F&B ventures.
Right.
A tough job, but someone had to do it. It was all fun.
That's the moral high ground. Someone has to eat and drink.
For the masses, you must take this risk. But it was fun. And then I quit that a couple of years ago and started out on my own. So I now write for a bunch of F&B publications. I launched a podcast called Big Food Energy last year. I continue to do a bunch of different things in the space. So it's fun.
So I want to reset the time 20 years, go back and start doing what Smitha has done. And if there's ever a time travel machine, that's what I'm going to do. But jokes apart, the reason why we have Smitha on our show today is because there's no better person to talk about the topic that we're going to discuss. It's about bar snacks. So what you eat while you're drinking, how did they start, what are the different bar snacks that we have across the world, how drinking has changed and therefore snacking has changed along with it. So we'll touch upon all of these topics today with Smitha. But before we get into the more technical aspects of all of this, Smitha, what's your favorite bar snack?
Favorite bar snack would have to be masala papad.
Okay.
I feel like that perfect sort of combination of great texture, so it's crunchy, but also like, you know, you have the tomato and you have the onion. So flavor wise, it's like tangy, sweet, sour. You have the masala on top of it. So I think all in all, like just a really good accompaniment to whatever you're drinking.
Right.
I feel like you can't really go wrong with masala papad.
But I have seen places which have gone wrong with papad as well.
Really?
Like, I also feel that it gets very soggy.
Yeah.
Half the papad
is
very crunchy and then half the papad is just very soggy.
You have to eat it quickly. You have to be greedy like me and eat it fast.
So, Smitha, tell us about how did bar snacks originate? Which country did they start? Because we have a lot of mythological references in our literatures also, but we hear about fish and chips from England, and chips was like technically the first bar snack that came into being. Masala peanuts is all India favorite. Whether you're drinking in a bar or a home, that's something that always comes with it. So a little bit about origins, history, how it started.
Sure. So of course, you know, like you mentioned, in our mythology and in our like ancient scripts and stuff, there's a lot of mention of snacks with alcohol. It's kind of like a very obvious association. Obviously, the idea is to look at, is to sort of pair foods that work well with alcohol. So that concept in itself is not a new concept. But bar snacks, as they evolved, it was interesting because I was doing some reading before this podcast. I came across this one article that talked about the history of bar snacks in the UK, and essentially it started as like these watering holes were launched in the UK, in England. People started drinking. Bar owners realized that, hey, people are getting pretty drunk. Now we need to give them something to actually fill them up, but not too much so that they keep drinking. Something that whets their appetite, that gets those salivatory glands going, just to get people excited about continue drinking, basically. So initially there wasn't a lot of cooking inside a bar. So what a lot of people would do is get street food vendors and then, you know, sort of get them to supply to the bar. So it was, say, stuff like pickled onions, stuff like whelk, which is a type of seafood, mussels, stuff that was sort of easy to eat with your hand, because again, this was street food coming into the bar. So things like that is like how it sort of originated. And then of course, potatoes came into England in like the 1600s. By the 1800s, potatoes were everywhere. And then of course that gave us crisps, which, you know, became a very widely popular snack across England, and continues to be a very popular snack. And then, you know, the packaged chips sort of went into packaged all kinds of snacks, right? Packaged nuts, packaged peanuts with sugar, packaged peanuts with like all kinds of masala, caramelized, yes. And then of course that takes us to now, where you have all kinds of takes on all of these bar snacks. So it's interesting how the circle is kind of completing itself.
I also read somewhere that, you know, most of the bars always serve salted, like any salted snack, because it dehydrates you, so you want to drink more, and it also kind of offsets the bitter taste of the alcohol, because sodium kind of numbs your palate to the bitterness, and so you're easily able to kind of sip more and more. So that's, I think, a most business trick also to keep serving salted snacks so that people keep drinking more and more.
Definitely, I'm definitely a victim of that at bars like Ghetto in Bombay, where they still serve you popcorn, free popcorn. So as a college student, we'd all, you know, me and my friends would just go stuff ourselves with popcorn, feel very thirsty, drink more beer, and then the cycle continued until I learned when I started writing about food that this is essentially something that bar owners do to get you to pay for more alcohol, which worked. So I'm not complaining, really.
So, Smita, closer home in India, obviously, masala peanuts is the most voted bar snack that people have, but I think there are also regional nuances to it. In the south, there are also some pickled seafoods and stuff like that, anchovies and all of that they serve. Chicken 65 again is like, chicken 65 in itself is a story for another podcast, but chicken 65 is also a very popular bar snack. Northeast, I'm sure, has its own nuances. So tell us about some of the popular bar snacks that you've seen in India over the years.
Sure. I'll start with Kerala. That's where I'm from, and I've been to many a toddy shop to drink toddy. What I really enjoy about the bar snacks in Kerala is one they're called touchings, especially like, you know, so you can be served a glass of toddy, and that's paired with sometimes it's maybe just pickle.
Okay.
And essentially it's called touchings because you just take a touch of it and lick and then drink.
Oh.
So it's a lot of fun. Like I've never tasted, Nimbu pickle before with an alcoholic beverage, but it's actually a pretty good combination.
Right.
It's sort of, I think, the same logic as serving something salty with a drink that gets you to drink more. So pickles, touchings. They've been things like tiny baby shark. As well, that's served, which is essentially
baby sharks.
Baby shark.
Okay.
Things like mackerel, fried mackerel, thin, crispy. You eat it like a French fry. Those are the things in Kerala. Apart from that, there's also this one dish which is fried mussels. So mussels are very popular in Kerala. So it's a deep fried mussel, which is amazing. That's Kerala. Apart from that, of course, there are different sorts of snacks that you have in different parts of India. In Goa, of course, there's the churiz, churiz pav, which pairs pretty well with fenny. In the north, of course, there's Amritsari fish tikka and all of the tikka kebab sort of varieties.
Yeah, they go very well with whiskey because a lot of North Indians drink whiskey.
Exactly.
So intense alcohol, intense flavors in the tikkas and the kebabs. I think just work really well. Is there any particular combination that you really like with toddy or with fenny or whatever? Is there a particular combination that you really crave for on days where you're very tired and you just want to have a drink with some nice snack?
This is going to make me sound very bougie, but I really like truffle fries when I'm drinking.
Right.
Just because it's it's salty, but it also has a little bit of umami. So it keeps you eating and drinking. It's also, I find, when I go out to drink with friends or with family, it's a very like you don't need to think too much about ordering it because it's something that everyone on the table likes.
Right.
And it will fill your stomach, it will line your stomach, so you don't have to worry about getting too hammered when you're drinking. So that's really something that I like to eat when I'm drinking. But apart from that, if I'm going to like a dive bar-y kind of place, then actually like a nimbu achar is a lot of fun.
Right. And Smita, like how are the bar snacks in India different? Because you also travel a lot in South Asia.
Yeah.
And you've seen bars in Singapore, which is like the cocktail capital of the world, and Thailand and Malaysia and all. So do their bar snacks also have their regional influences? What are the favorites in those parts of the world?
So it's interesting now because there are a bunch of, I think over the past 10 years, especially in South Asia, Southeast Asia, the bar culture has kind of boomed.
Yes.
So everyone's doing like cocktails that are inspired by their heritage, by their culinary traditions, and you see that in the cocktails themselves and in the bar snacks.
Right.
So in Singapore and Thailand, I've seen things like pandan flavored peanuts. I've seen there's this one snack that you find in Malaysia, across Southeast Asia, really. I think it's called Malaysian peanuts.
Okay.
But it's essentially their version of masala peanuts.
Okay.
They're like these deep fried peanuts with this really thick kind of
because there is less fat in
lemongrassy
peanuts that you have to deep fry.
It's just like brilliant.
Because they're so fat. Peanut is so deprived of fat. We have to deep fry it.
Exactly. So it's these deep fried peanuts that are like tossed in lemongrass and a bit of spices. So again, very addictive. You can just keep eating it. Super tasty.
Okay.
Apart from that, when I was in Vietnam, actually, this was not at a bar, but it was outside a bar.
Right.
And the culture was to like have a drink at the bar and then go eat on the street.
Right.
But this was one of the more like out there things that I've eaten, which was a duck egg that's been like semi-fertilized.
Okay.
So you can see the fetus a little bit. You're not supposed to look at it, just pop it into your mouth. It's like very popular street food in Vietnam.
Okay.
But that was interesting because it had like a slightly ammonia taste, so a slightly like liver, like a liver pate kind of taste.
Understood.
And then again, that's something immediately after that you want to go drink.
Go and drink.
You want something cool and refreshing. It's interesting how bar snacks kind of borrow from their own cultures to sort of pair with local alcohol as well.
No, because you mentioned umami, Japan is also like another country which is heavy on drinking and therefore heavy on innovating drinks and bar snacks. Have you been to Japan?
I have not, sadly, not been to Japan.
So
it's high up, it's number one on my list.
So whenever you go next, we'll do a podcast about
100%,
food in Japan
100%.
and drinks in Japan. But Smita, tell us a little bit about, like you touched upon the fact that cocktail and cocktail culture in itself has evolved in the last 10 years, not just in India but across South Asia, everywhere. How do you think the erstwhile very plain Jane snacks have kind of evolved? Like, how do you see their evolution and what do you think will be the trends going forward?
So in terms of evolution, I think there's a lot of borrowing from, there's a lot of dependence on nostalgia. So people want to reinterpret what they had growing up. It's always kind of, I like to see things that play with nostalgia because I feel it's always, there's this element of delight of like, oh my God, this is something I ate when I was a kid and now I'm drinking it, or I'm, drinking it with something, eating it with something. And I think across the board bars are doing this very well. Boilermaker in Goa has their version of masala peanuts, their take on masala peanuts, which is the churiz peanuts.
So they've taken the Goan churiz
exactly.
element.
So it works very well because they're situated in Goa, and it's honestly delicious. Like, it's like basically churiz and peanuts, and it's cooked in the fat of the churiz. So I can just keep eating it. Been there a couple of times and have always ordered it. A bunch of bars in Bombay do a version. Obviously, poha is big in Maharashtra, so a bunch of bars do a version of like poha-crusted prawns that are interesting. I've seen. What else have I seen? The one thing that that really sort of surprised me was this little snack that Papa's serves. Papa's in Bombay. So they have a cocktail that is based on, it's like their version of a Bloody Mary. So it tastes kind of like pizza in a sense, and it's paired with a little Monaco biscuit. That comes with shavings of like this very fancy cheese and this little sort of tomato sauce, which is obviously a take on like the very old school Monaco biscuit
with cheese and
with Amul cheese and ketchup. And it's served in a little pizza box, which I thought was just so cute. The drink is called Papa's Hut. So it's like their take on pizza and Pizza Hut. But I just thought that was such a cool, innovative take on a bar snack that blends very nicely with nostalgia.
And like, if you can give us 5 good cocktail bars, maybe in India or even Singapore and all, who you think have their bar snack menu spot on? Like, everything on the menu is good and it's just too tempting to not have.
So in India, I would say, again, Boilermaker is fresh in my mind because I went to Goa recently. Again, Papa's does some interesting tidbits that's inspired heavily from Indian cuisine. In Singapore, I recently went to Jigger and Pony. Again, fun selection of like short eats with drinks. In Hong Kong, Savory Project, Bar Leone has some amazing food. I can literally go to that bar and just eat and not necessarily drink. They have a little mortadella sandwich, which is very good. I haven't been to the Brook in Delhi, but I hear they're doing very interesting things with their food program.
The Brook is at Leela?
No, the Brook is by the same sidecar guys.
That's in Gurgaon.
It's in Gurgaon. I recently went to Bombay Dark after a while. So again, their menu is basically a perfect a case study for this podcast, for this episode, because it's literally desi daru and Chakhna.
Right.
And they do takes on YY, they do takes on different kinds of like prawns, on like all kinds of Chakhna basically, which I thought is very creative and thoughtful.
Good you brought up Bombay Duck because it's kind of an ode to the auntie bars of Bombay.
Yeah.
And that is a very interesting story which a lot of our listeners I'm sure have not heard because I only discovered it very recently. I'm not from Bombay, so pardon my ignorance for that. But can you talk us a little bit about how auntie bars started?
Sure.
And now how some of the bars in Bombay are kind of going back to their roots and trying to create that same nostalgia and atmosphere, one of them being Bombay Duck.
Sure. So not a lot of people know that Bombay actually went through quite a long period of prohibition. So when we talk about prohibition in the context of cocktails, we think of the US.
Yes.
But the US, I think, went through an era of prohibition that was just about 5 years.
Right.
But Bombay actually went through an era of prohibition that was 25 years long. So people had to get very, very creative because pre-prohibition, when the British were in India, when the British were in Bombay, there were lots of cool jazz bars. You could go to the Taj, you could go to basically that entire strip of restaurants on Churchgate and experience some fab alcohol and basically jazz music, live jazz music. Now this changed when a certain chief minister came into power, essentially said, okay, this, maybe alcohol is not something that's a good idea. He was, I think, catering to a lot of public opinion around alcohol. Gandhi at the time was very pro-prohibition. Gujarat had recently become a dry state. So at that point, prohibition was then sort of locked down in Bombay. Obviously, that didn't mean that people just stopped drinking overnight. They had to get very creative.
State lost the revenue, that's all.
Exactly. And then, so then there were these aunties who were from Goa, who would basically run bars out of their homes. So in their 90s and all of that, they were in their homes cooking and also serving like a local sort of hooch that they made.
Okay. Local, sorry, what did you say?
A hooch, which is essentially like their local
snacks,
like snack, but also like a version of alcohol that they made.
Okay.
It wasn't the most high quality alcohol. I've read some stories of like people going blind drinking that alcohol. So you had to really want your fix to go to an auntie bar. Auntie bars are sort of very nostalgically talked about as this place where, that would bring all of Bombay together. So you could find someone from a very fancy home, but also like a rickshaw driver come together and drink. But basically they were pretty seedy places where you would go to just for your fix.
Great leveler of society.
Great level, exactly. And alongside these, this suspect alcohol were the snacks. So these aunties realized that, okay, this is a good way to make some money, to make some extra money. People are coming in, getting hammered. May as well give them some food
and make more money.
Exactly. So then they started serving things like boiled eggs, which were easy to do. Different kinds of eggs dressed up differently. Different versions of like a sorpotel or a vindaloo in a dry sort of form so that people could eat it. Yeah, it's really interesting, the history of auntie bars, because there was usually a curtain, there wasn't an actual door to the apartment, which would sort of signal that this was an auntie bar. Downstairs near the building, there would usually be another auntie selling boiled eggs, so that you know that, okay, there's an auntie bar in the vicinity. And then they would have their sort of informers who would, shout out if a certain code, if someone was approaching, so then everyone had to sort of shut shop. So very creative, very innovative. People get very creative when it comes to alcohol. But obviously when, once alcohol was legalized again, then all of that just sort of disappeared. But I'd love to see a version of that come to life again. Obviously not an illegal version, but but a version that pays some kind of a
more
tribute
casual,
to that.
more neighborhood.
Yeah,
more
it'll be
informal.
fun with aunties, serving you in their 90s. It would be so fun.
Yeah, that would be cool. Because I think we've become too sophisticated as like the bar going crowd is becoming just too sophisticated. It's like some of the bars I personally feel are starting to become very intimidating. You know, there is just too much of innovation. Sometimes just keep it simple. Just keep it like very classic. I come rant about my day, how bad my boss is and stuff like that, have a drink and just go back. I don't think there's a bar like that in Bombay yet.
Not yet. There's a lot of I think it's a cycle again, like it's happening. It happened with food, and now we're seeing less complicated versions of restaurants, and it is happening slowly with bars as well. So Bar Leone in Hong Kong is a great example of that. Lorenzo, the owner, is just basically like, these are the cocktails, this is the food. It's really simple. Not fancy, there's no smoke, there's no anything coming out of anywhere, it should not be. So really just come, eat
not
and
everything
drink.
Is clarified.
Exactly, not everything is clarified. It's simple. And I think people have really responded to that because it was #1 on the Asia's 50 Best list last year. So yeah, I think we're going to see more of that because people just want to hang out and enjoy a drink and a conversation.
So while we'll not deep dive into the economics of the bar, etc., everything, I just want to understand a little bit business perspective. For example, if I am running a bar and I only want to be like a cocktail or a drinks forward bar, I don't want to serve a lot of food. What percentage of revenue usually comes from, and ballpark numbers, we don't need exact numbers, what percentage of revenue comes from bar snacks? How much time do bar owners really invest in doing the menu, and therefore does it become more attractive because the bar snack menu is very, very thoughtful, carefully curated and crafted and all of that, or people just don't really focus so much on what the snack is, they are more concentrated on the drinks should be good and something to nibble on is just fine.
So to answer your first question about revenue, at bars, I think the revenue is primarily focused on the alcohol. That's where you can charge a great amount of markup because you have like a very expensive tequila that no one else has, or you have a fancy wine that no one else has. So that's on the percentage. I would say most of the money that you make is on the alcohol.
Almost 80 to 90% would come from drinks.
Would come from drinks. The snacks, I think, are a good sort of add-on. It's like a bonus. Personally, for me, I would love to go, like if I had to pick, I'd like to go to a bar that had decent food that I could eat at as well. Especially in Indian cities, you don't really go bar hopping. This happens a lot across Asia, where there's a street full of bars and you just go from bar to bar.
Have one drink there, one drink there. And,
but in India, given traffic, given everything, you're not like once you reach a place, you're not likely to go anywhere else. And so there's an importance that a lot of people put on actually the food because people want to eat. They don't want to get up and go anywhere else.
And I think Indians are more like खाने में क्या है?
Exactly.
A lot more than
what
what
ignore the fact that Indians love to eat, right? And they like their options. So which is why a lot of the bar menus have different kinds of options. It's not only salty, but you'll get a little bit of a sweet profile. You'll get a little bit of a sour profile, just because that's how we eat and drink.
So Smita, if going back to my question of if I wanted to ever open a bar, because everyone wants to open a bar or a restaurant, how much time should I spend on curating my cocktail and drinks menu? Especially if I have to open it in India, like you said, people want to go in one place and then settle at that place and not disappear. And how much time should I spend thinking about the food that I'm going to serve?
So generally, like based on my conversations with bartenders, bar owners, it typically takes about 6 to 8 months to put, just the entire research together. Cocktails generally take lesser time than food, because obviously when someone's opening a cocktail bar, the focus is on the drinks, right? And so bartenders are kind of giving it their all, getting super creative. A lot of times food is an afterthought, and it's like, okay, these are our cocktails, these are our drinks, now what do we do with the food? Yeah, which is not a bad place to sort of be with. And then the food sort of takes those last few months, also because food, I feel, is so subjective, even more so than cocktails. Some people might like something sweet when they're drinking, some people might like something salty, some people may not want something too spicy. So it really depends on the many different palates on your team and your sort of sample group when you're testing the menu out. I think the general ratio is about 5 to 6 months, people sort of give it their all on the cocktail menu, and then about 2 months on the food menu.
Also, obviously post-pandemic, we've seen a significant increase in awareness levels. People have become more health conscious. There are certain people who are avoiding like certain categories of food altogether. Veganism is on the rise, and a lot of plant-based food, etc. is on the rise. And obviously, a lot of bar snack is technically falling in the unhealthy space. So how do you think bar owners are kind of adapting to this change in consumer behavior? What kind of healthy options are coming about? Are they curating special vegan menus? Is that a trend that you're seeing in India or outside? Talk us through that a little bit.
So definitely, people are becoming more health conscious. Anyway, you're doing the extra calories by drinking some cocktails. So then why should I then have something deep fried with it? Is the general sort of logic that people are thinking about now. But I think what some bar owners are doing is interesting. They're kind of taking out the deep fried, very carby sort of snacks from the menu. To me, that's very sad because I personally like a good carby something when I'm drinking, just so that I can line my stomach. But yeah, so now you're finding a lot of like vegetarian heavy items on a menu. You'll find a lot of mushroom because mushroom is that food that even a hardcore non-vegetarian can eat because it's slightly meaty. You're finding a lot of plant-based sort of options. So some swaps like tofu and tempeh and things like that. I mean, when you're in a bar, I feel like you're not necessarily thinking about being super healthy.
Because people, I think, are already predisposed that I'm out to have alcohol and a good night, so a little bit of indulgence.
Exactly. So they want to have a good time. Of course, we're seeing this trend of like being healthy and sober cocktails, where there are a lot of like non-alcoholic spirits, non-alcoholic drinks that are appearing on cocktail menus. Earlier it was literally just called a mocktail, but now the more with it bars are calling it buzz-free drinks and things like that, which I think are more fun, and they're also putting in more thought into the cocktails, which is exciting. When it comes to bar snacks, I think by default a lot of Indian food is anyway vegan, is anyway pretty healthy. So that's why I think there's a lot to learn, and bar owners have a lot to glean from Indian food because there are just so many lessons. You're finding things like mini idlis now popping up on menus just because it's healthy, it's vegan, and it's tasty. It's a good liner for your stomach. So.
And it's fermented, so it's anyway good for the gut.
Exactly.
Good that you brought out the sober, curious sober cocktails, zero-proof cocktails. Do you think there are any bars who are really focusing, or some bars that have really stood out for you in terms of healthy drinking options. When it either cocktails or even in terms of the bar snacks that they put together?
Americano, Otra in Bombay are really good examples of that. I think Bar Spirit Forward in Bangalore also has a pretty decent selection of non-alcoholic drinks. In Goa there's Slow Tide that has a few options. The Bombay Canteen again does a whole bunch of options that aren't too unhealthy as well, because I think that's the other thing when it comes to spirit-free cocktails is that it tends to be very sweet, or there's a whole bunch of syrup in it.
Right.
You don't know how much sugar there is, all of that stuff.
It might turn out to be unhealthier than the actual
And then the actual drink. Than the actual cocktail. But yeah, like these places are kind of very, very conscious of that. Also, a lot of these places are more restaurants than bars. So it's kind of obvious that you know they would think more deeply about the food and that sort of connection.
Because they'll have families coming in, so not necessarily everyone is drinking in the family, so they want to have these options.
Yeah.
And do you think this is going to grow into a trend even in the cocktail forward bars as things evolve in the space? More focus on, I mean, equal focus on, I would say, the non-alcoholic drinks, etc. Everything.
A lot of people just, obviously you'll see a lot of it in dry January, and then people will forget about it over the course of the year. But I think definitely people want to be slightly more conscious about what they're eating and drinking. I went out recently with my cousins who are like 21 and 18, and they don't drink as much as I drink. Like we were at a bar and I was like, okay, so we've done one cocktail. Anyone else? Like, I'm thinking of getting this one next. And they were like, you know, we're good. We're fine. And I was like, oh my God, I'm now this old auntie who wants to drink.
Who wants to drink and spoil the cousins. But
exactly.
They don't want to drink.
Exactly. Because, you know, they... I think it also stems from the entertainment options that a younger generation have.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, drinking at a bar was like the number one cool thing to do. So that's where, you know, we sort of grew up. We hung out. We, you know, had these amazing conversations with our friends. But newer, younger generations have the options to do more things that are not necessarily centered around alcohol. And I think bars are going to have to try harder to bring that crowd in. It may be cocktails that have a lower alcohol, a lower ABV, or even drinks that are non-alcoholic. But they're definitely going to start, we're going to start seeing a lot more of it.
So I think one of the things that has always struck me is this word that we call bar snacks in India, Chakhna. Like it's just, even before what I knew alcohol was, because my dad used to drink occasionally and all of that. You know, this word used to float around. I would never understand the meaning of it. Obviously, as you grew up and started drinking, you understood what it is. But where does this word Chakhna, chaat, all of this originate from? Is it from our mythological references of drinking only, or they have no connection whatsoever?
It's a good question. I'm not entirely sure, but it's mostly probable that Chakhna is derived from the word chak, which is like to taste. And even like chaat is derived from like, you know, chatna. So all sort of words and synonyms that mean to taste. And then if you're tasting, then you want something, at least in the Indian context, it translates to something that's a bit chatpata, that's a bit umami, that's sweet, sour, all of those things.
Those flavors. Packed with flavor.
Packed with flavors. Yeah.
So, Smita, tell me how because a large part of alcohol consumption in India, even today, happens at home.
Yep.
Despite the fact that there are so many cool places and bars, etc., everything. I mean, when it comes to hard beer and wine, still is outside, but hard liquor is still very 100%. Much a home consumption thing at the masses. What are, I know masala peanuts is pretty standard, but what are some of the other knickknacks that people order? Papad, of course, is I think one thing, but in your experience, house parties, what are the kind of nibbles that people keep?
Sure. So again, I feel like we get a lot of our bar snacks heritage from colonialism, from the British. You still see a lot of that in like a gymkhana or you know, in a setting that's the army or the navy or whatever. So if you go to a lot of these parties, you'll see deviled eggs. That's still very much a part of many menus. You'll see things like cheese and pineapple on a toothpick. That's still, you know, it's still yummy and very much a part of like how we eat and drink. So I think that's sort of our borrowed heritage. But when it comes to things now, like people are getting super creative. You're borrowing from all parts of the country and even the world. So, of course, hummus is now, I think, now an Indian dish because like it's at every party.
We've added every possible flavor to hummus,
Exactly.
from tikka, chari tikka to everything.
Yeah, to haldi, to this and that. And it's funny because I was visiting a friend in London who's Indian, and he was like, oh, you know, I've come up with this amazing thing and, you know, people love it and it's so simple. And I'm like, okay, cool, what is it? He's like, it's basically haldi hummus. But, you know, I've rebranded it as like Indian turmeric. And it's lovely and people are going mad over it and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I think that's hummus has become very much a part of our Indian snack repertoire.
Right.
Apart from that, I think kebabs still are number one when it comes to snacking. Personally, I love a little bit of carbs also when I'm snacking. So like the mini sandwiches, you know, big fan of those. Different kinds of chaat you see people getting creative with. I love Chinese bhel, so at a lot of my home parties there's always like one bowl of Chinese bhel where people can sort of just stuff themselves with. So yeah, there's a lot of like old school stuff, but again a lot of innovations because recipes are so freely available everywhere. It's not complicated to whip up something easy without too much effort.
Give me 3 snacks that you would serve if you were hosting a party at your place.
Okay.
With the drinks, and tell us about like what would be the drinks and what would be the snacks.
Sure. So I am actually a very lazy host. I've been to a bunch of house parties where, you know, the hosts have put together a batch of cocktails and they've done this and they've done that. And I'm the kind of person who's like, you know, come to my house, the booze is there, the snacks are here, please help yourself. Like, I do not want to be like making drinks the whole night. I want to be chilling with my friends. Because I'm that kind of a host, I try to be as hands-off as possible. I feel you have to, when you're like hosting a fun house party, you have to put in the elements for a fun house party, but it can't be too manufactured. So having drinks in a space that's easily sort of accessible to everyone, of course, having all of the garnishes and stuff ready. And when it comes to snacks, again, stuff that's easy to eat, but will also line your stomach. So kebabs, stuffed mushrooms, like cheese stuffed mushrooms, all the things that are simple and easy to do. I also like to do, like I said, Chinese bhel. Yeah, those are kind of the things that you'd find at my house. You definitely find like a dip, like a hunkered dip with veggies. Just for the people who are pretending to be healthy. There's this one thing that we do, which is like a grilled baby corn. It's super easy. We coat the baby corn with gunpowder and just put it into the air fryer, so it comes out nice and crispy. So yeah, kind of like a healthy French fry, in a sense. Yeah, so that's always a big hit. It's very easy to do. Yeah, so those are mostly the kind of things that.
Next time, please invite me to your
for
house
sure,
party,
for sure.
Because even for a lazy person, that's just a lot of things that you just said. Like for me, it's like whenever the closest of my friends are there, I open a packet of nachos and there's salsa sauce. And if there's anything else you guys want to order in, this is the address.
Fair enough.
We can just Swiggy it and all, because firstly, I'm not a very house party person myself. I've hosted a lot in the past, but now rarely invite people.
Of course.
If you want to meet, let's just go out.
It's easier.
It's just very hassle-free. But yeah, for me, because I can't have peanuts, I'm allergic to peanuts.
Oh no.
So the easiest snack for me with drinks is nachos. Dip it into cheese or salsa.
For sure.
And then just have it. But I think with that, we've pretty much talked about everything. We've come to the end of this conversation. So Smita, anything that you, before obviously we sign off, anything that you want to give as a tip to some budding entrepreneurs who want to open a bar? What are the things that they should keep in mind? What should they focus on and what should they not really fret about? Because a lot of things are also, they evolve over time. You always don't get it first time, right? So like maybe some things that they should keep in mind when they're making their snacks menu, especially.
Just some advice when it comes to, if you're opening a bar, I would say don't spend all your money on the interiors. Obviously, don't spend, you know, don't blow your big budget on the interiors. spend it on your ingredients, spend it on the actual R&D of putting the menu together. When it comes to bar snacks, I would say have a good ratio of veg to non-veg. Very often, and I've become more conscious of this because my husband is now vegetarian.
Right.
He wasn't, sadly. But now I'm more conscious of like how much vegetarian food is on a menu. And very often, what a lot of people forget about is vegetarian options that are not super cheesy or super carby. So, you know, if you're vegetarian and you're going to a bar, you're either eating French fries or you're eating cheese toast, or you're eating some version of a mushroom. But you're not actually eating vegetables. And then also, you know, with this whole staying healthy thing, I also like to eat vegetables when I'm out. I don't necessarily want to eat something that's super meaty, that's very sticky. I think the one really like non-negotiable when it comes to bar snacks is that it has to be easy to eat. It can't be too messy. You know, people love ordering things like chicken wings, but I will never order chicken wings because it's just such a mess. Even though it's super tasty, so I'm very happy to eat chicken wings like in a restaurant or in my house, but never at a bar because you know, you eat a chicken wing, your hands are messy, and then you have to pick up a drink.
You always need a tissue.
You need a tissue,
and then it's sticky.
Exactly. So there's always like this technicality of like, oh, actually maybe I need hand sanitizer, or you have to go and wash your hands. So yeah, anything that's too cumbersome to eat, avoid. Anything that I would say, especially in a hot country like India and a tropical country like India, anything that's too hot temperature-wise, I would say avoid. So things like momos and stuff might work in the north, but you know, as you travel further south in India, something that's piping hot, avoid in a bar, just because people want something that's fun, that's thoughtful, but also not too intense. So yeah.
Wow, I think that turned out to be quite a conversation. I almost feel like going to a bar and ordering a drink.
I think we should.
And then ordering all the bar snacks on their menu and trying what's good, what's not good, and judging it on a score of 1 to 10. But,
for sure.
And we'll definitely do that sometime. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I know we've been discussing about it for a while, and this finally happened. If you have any questions about bar snacks, about food, we will link in Smitha's details in the video, so you can directly write to her, or you can put it in the comments below, and Smitha and I will be very happy to respond to it. Let us know what did you think about this video, and please like and subscribe to our channel.